Hello, welcome to the Ron's T-Bone Shed Show this Thursday the 20th. Normally I do my videos late at night. Well, this is early morning. It's like 7 a.m. Early for me. Some of you, you're probably up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So I was asked by a client who bought a horn from me to do a scratch finish old super for him. And he requested that I do a video on it. So his name's Hans, and I'm gonna show you at least the beginnings of it. So here's what I got. So it is a nice olds. I got a custom weight on that one. It's not too bad. Recently I wanted to try, instead of doing hand debrazing, trying to use this. And I thought I would just take it directly to the lacquer, and well, that's kind of ugly right now, but what I really need to do, and the way I've been doing it, is I have to strip the lacquer off the horn first. So I'm going to use this. I use the Fareese cold strip, which is what this is over here. And you can buy that from Fareese Tools. And I'm going to go ahead and just show you a little bit here. I'm going to take a paintbrush, dip it in there, and just start putting it on the horn. So we're gonna do this. I think I'm gonna leave the rest of the nickel coated, but I'm gonna do the bell. I don't know. I have to go back and look at the emails again and find out specifically what it was that he wanted me to scratch and wanted me not to scratch. So I'm just gonna start down here just for the sake of showing you how I go about it. But you can see that it starts to deteriorate the lacquer pretty quick. Now Olds was pretty well known for having baked on enamel lacquer, which was very durable. But again, for those of you who are unfamiliar with lacquer, it's not plating. It's basically just a transparent paint made out of a clear coat material. So it comes off not as easily with paint stripper. Okay, so I'm just, like I said, I'm just kind of get it started here. Usually I'm a lot more aggressive with all this, but I'm just going to put a little bit on here. But you can already see it's starting to remove the lacquer. It crinkles up like that. And when it crinkles up like that, not long after, if you let it set longer, it takes a little more effort to get it off the horn. If it crinkles up really good like this, then you can just rinse it off with hot water for the most part and a sponge. But if you let it set too long, then you have to scrub it off, and that's when I use like 4/0 steel wool to do that, because the surface is going to end up getting polished anyway, and the 4/0 scratches it most minimally because it's so fine. But yeah, and then the other thing is, if you want to rinse it off quicker, sooner, there'll be some pieces left over. So the thing is you just have to go back over again and kind of retouch the area, the spot areas with it. So it's not going to be like a one-step, lacquer strip. You'll have to do the major part, and then you'll have to go back and then get the leftover pieces. So, and then sometimes you'll end up with a stubborn area, and you may have to hit it again. Now, I just got an email from Samuel Plays Brass. You probably saw his station. He's got like 25,000 subscribers. He just texted me this morning. He goes, "Hey, I'm trying to strip a horn, and I got a really tough, difficult area. What do I use?" Well, for the really tough, difficult areas, I'll use Easy Off Heavy Duty Oven Cleaner, because it has lye in it, and the lye will tear apart the lacquer. And if you have a horn with that ugly orangey 1970s, King, Con, Selmer, bulletproof stuff, which is an epoxy enamel, that works pretty good against it. This cold strip is almost ineffective against that orangey epoxy enamel. So yeah, this is coming together pretty good. Okay, so here we go. We're going to show you the next step. Okay, so after the lacquer starts to crackle up, I take it to hot water in my kitchen sink. Now, don't judge me. This is my kitchen. It's my kitchen sink. This is all I got. And I need to remind everybody, I'm a hobbyist. I'm not a pro shop. So when you're like, hey, can you refinish my horn? Understand you're getting it from a guy who works from home in his garage and in his shed and in his kitchen, okay? So whatever results you end up getting, understand that you're getting it from a guy who is a hobbyist, okay, not a pro shop. I don't have formal training, and I never worked in a music store to do this. I learned from mentors independently, so I'm basically self-taught with mentorship. Okay, here we go. Here's the next stage. Okay, here's the horn, and here's the hot water. And you can see, for the most part, it comes off pretty easily. For the most part. And this is pretty hot water. I mean, it's steaming. Now you can see some of it's stubborn. It's still there. I'll have to go back over it again. You just brush the stripper on it again. And here we go. Here, that came up a little easier. Now, it's not always going to work ideally the way you want it to, but it's just the beginning. So. And if I get it on my dishes, I just come over here and I rinse the dishes off. You know, you're like, oh my God, you're going to kill people. No, I'm not going to kill anybody. Nobody dies. Okay, so it's just the way it works. You know, the other thing I use for some of this is I'll use like copper wool, because copper wool doesn't rust. You use steel wool, it turns into a pile of rust in just moments. But since I'm going to abrade this surface anyway, you know, it helps just take it off. You know, does the hot water affect the other lacquer? Not really. I mean, like I told you, this stuff's pretty durable. You know, the baked on epoxy. You know, if you're putting hot water in a Bach or a Yamaha, yeah, it'll take it off, because that lacquer is really fine and very thin. So anyway. So yeah, let me get this bell back down here. Like I said, I'm not going to get this all completed here on camera, but I'm just showing you the process. So see, it just kind of pushes it off the surface, because it doesn't always just wash right off. And then, you know, the copper stuff doesn't scratch as severely as some of you may think. So yeah, you know, it takes it off like so, like here. Okay, let me turn this over, get some more of it off here, kind of pushing it off. And I will have to go back over it again with some more lacquer stripper, and probably tape off the areas that I don't want stripped. So, but yeah. Now this area is scratched because that's where I use the brush on the drill to see what that would look like. And now that I have the lacquer off of it, I'll try it again. I just wanted to see, because I do my brush with a Scotch-Brite material. I don't use a mechanical brush, but I just thought I'd give the brush a try and see, just test it on an area and see what it does. So, and you have to be really litigious with it, because when I use the Scotch-Brite, it's very light on the surface when it comes to scratching, but you use these industrial strength things like brass brushes and soft brushes and whatnot, and it'll dig into the surface. So if you ever want to recover that scratch, which I've done many times, where you scratch it lightly and it looks good, but then you're like, oh, I want it shiny. You can shine it back as long as your scratch is really done lightly, because you're just looking for the cosmetics on it. You're not looking to dig into the surface unless it's a very severely damaged, pitted surface, and you need to take the brass down. So that's kind of where that's at. Anyway, so you know, see, most of it's off. I'm going to have to go back and you know, kind of fine tune where I'm taking the lacquer off, but that's that stage. So for the finer areas, I'm using a smaller brush like this. So I'll get a little bit of lacquer on here, lacquer stripper, and then I'll come up here and I'll just carefully get up to the ferrule here without getting it all over the place with that bigger brush. But yeah, you know, that's what I get for for having a degree in art. You know, you just kind of think like an artist sometimes when it comes to brushing any medium on. Now, you can see it. Some of the lacquer's already missing here. It's not because of anything I did. It's already just kind of missing. So I'm probably going to go up there and take more of that off. But I just wanted to show you for the fine areas, don't be afraid to use a smaller brush. You know, and then again down here, I didn't get everything on this. So if you go back over it with the stripper, it'll loosen up the remaining tough stuff, especially here in the imprinted text on the nickel crayons or tone ring or garland. Those are all the multiple names for this ring that they put down here around the bell. So crayons, tone ring, or garland. Most commonly, I think it's referred to as a krantz, but you will also hear it often referred to as a seldomly as a garland and often as a tone ring. So I guess it depends on how you're trying to communicate it to your audience. But yeah, anyway, so I'm just kind of getting in there with some more stuff, and you can see, you know, the stuff that was tight in here, it'll loosen up. So yeah, that's kind of how this is all kind of working here. So let's get some more goo and stuff, and it kind of takes it up here. Almost feel like Bob Ross, and it's like, it's very happy brushing of the material to remove the material to make it beautifully shiny. Yeah. Anyway, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really a big fan of Bob Ross. You're like, well, why not? Well, Bob Ross uses something called the wet on wet method, and he basically, I won't say stole it, but he kind of took the method from the originator of the wet on wet fast paint hobby painting out here by a guy named William Alexander. He was a local out here in Huntington Beach, Orange County. He used to have PBS shows. It was the magic art of William Alexander or something like that. He was a little chubby German guy, and he would talk with a German accent, and he'd be shooting this and zipping that, and he would have this accent. He was a cute guy. My mom used to watch it all the time. She would practice his wet on wet. Next thing you knew, Bob Ross comes up. He's using William Alexander's technique, because Bob Ross didn't learn this from a school. He learned it from William Alexander, and then he popularized it and he monetized it, and he basically, you know, him and his estate got really wealthy off of it. So I'm just kind of like, you know, it's William Alexander. You ripped him off, and you know, so I'm kind of surly like that about that whole thing, because William Alexander deserves the credit for the wet on wet popular method. But you see Bob Ross everywhere because, you know, he's got an afro and he talks soft, and he learned how to, you know, really promote his stuff. And his, you know, he's long gone, but his family, I mean, you still see Bob Ross stuff in art stores all over the place and hobby stores. And I'm just like, you know, that should go to the William Alexander estate too, you know. So I don't know. That's just me. That's what I get for being like that, you know. But yeah, so there it is. That's me and Bob Ross. Okay, so yeah, have you been watching this for a while? So I'm going to be rinsing off, hopefully, the last few bits and pieces here. Now, when you do this, it does leave, you see, it kind of looks like staining, but it's not. That's just polishing off. That's just the result of the lacquer stripper interacting with the grass surface. But yeah, that's just the last bits and pieces here are taking off are being taken off here. Around here, yeah. You know, there's a few little stubborn pieces here. That's the stuff I just painted on with a little brush, so I'll have to go back over it again. Anyway, here's a little tidbit for you, those of you who own supers and are like, it's front heavy. This counterweight you can buy from Thomann, Thomann. Not the American side, but the European side sells these. They're like 75 bucks. They fit perfectly on the super brace, like perfectly. And they look really nice too. So if you want to put a counterweight on your olds, that's the one. Okay, so here's where I'm at with this now. I kind of taped off the areas. I used a combination of both this brush and this Scotch Brite stuff. Okay, I'm finding out that the brass brush gives me a nice base scratch, and then I can go back over it and refine it with the Scotch Brite. So the base scratch from the brass brush, you know, kind of digs in there a little bit, not too deep. Like I said, I treated it very lightly, but then to go back over it, it kind of gives it a second layer of texture and refines it a little bit more. I mean, I can always go back over it some more with some steel wool and refine it some more, but I think what the people that I've been doing these for, they like the texture. They're not looking for a dull satin finish. Those dull satin finishes that you see like on horns that come from BAC or Wrath out in England, those are really well done, highly refined, even surfaces. You know, what you're going to get from me, and I try to tell everybody this, is, again, I'm a hobbyist, my bachelor's degree in art, so you're going to see my brush strokes. You're going to see, if I dare to say, you're going to see the artist's hand in your work. That's what you're going to see. You're not going to see this highly uniformed, perfect scratch surface. You're going to see Ron's hand in this work, and for whatever that's worth. So I'm just kind of letting you know ahead of time whether that's a warning, you know, or just a reality. So this is for my friend Hans. You're like, Hans? You mean like Hans in France? No, he's Filipino. Hans Pimentel. So he bought a 1305 tempo nickel-plated Bell King from me earlier in the year, and he's going to trade that back to me for this because he just fell in love with the way this looks, and the two horns are going to sound very different. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. And then, so I taped it off. You know, I taped this off. I'm going to get in there and try to just, you know, I'm going to do it like this. Okay, so I taped it off on purpose so you can see how it's polished like that, but you want to get that texture. Well, when I tape it off, I just pull it to try to get a uniformed without scratching the nickel plate under it. You see that? Hold on, there we go. See that? So so this is the detail work now, where you get like into the edge here. You know, so I'm probably doing it the hard way. There's probably an easier way by all the pros who've done this. Maybe they detach the bell and scratch it and then reattach it. I don't know. But, you know, so if I'm doing it the hard way, I'm doing it the hard way. But this is how I get it right up to the edge here. And it's kind of like brushing your teeth. You're supposed to brush it in the direction of your teeth growth, not against the teeth. You know, so you're like, really? I didn't know that. Yeah. I was taught that from a very young age, and yet I still have cavities. Anyway, so lots of cavities. So that's how I address the detail when it comes to trying to get against the surface. Is you just get in there and you just, little by little, you just try to match the texture and the direction so it looks like it's continuous. See? Let's see if I can get the focus here. Focus! Oh, come on. Oh, well, I don't know what to do with this phone. It's just, there we go. It's a little better. And then down here, I already taped this off, and, you know, it's just a matter of, see, just a matter of polishing it up and getting in there. Getting that all nice and shiny, you know, getting the metal polish off. And eventually when I'm done, I'll re-lacquer the affected areas. So here's an interesting thing about the old supers. The early supers of the 1940s, all this text was hand etched in. And then later it became stamped in. You know, it's just a little more efficient, I suppose, to stamp it. So, but yeah, the previous ones are hand etched. So you can actually see the the etching from like whatever tip that they used to etch into the bell, but that was all hand done. And this is all stamped. So this is a little newer model. This was made in the 1960s, not in the early 40s or the early 50s. And of course it's a Fullerton. You can see right there, Fullerton. Now, some information about those of you who might be somewhat Olds aficionados. Oh, the Fullerton ones aren't as good as the LA ones. Well, here's what I understand, and this is from talking to people who, knew Zig Canstel and are very familiar with the whole Olds brand. When Olds moved from LA to Fullerton, you know why they did that, right? Because the LA space was really small. I mean, this was, the 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, World War II. I mean, it was just a very small space. So back in the day, Fullerton, which is all fully developed now, had lots of open spaces. It's kind of like people moving their factories to Elkhart, Indiana. There was just a lot of open space out there for larger factories and warehouses. So they moved to Fullerton to get a bigger operating space, not to make anything worse. I mean, it was the whole crew, from what I understand. They just moved. They just moved to Fullerton. And then, of course, when they moved to Fullerton, they made some design changes. They put Fullerton on things instead of Los Angeles, and it's still all the same materials. I mean, we're only talking less than 50 miles, probably 25 or 30 miles from LA to Fullerton, going across the 60 freeway or the 91 freeway, even if there was a 91 back then. But, yeah, it's just a bigger facility. Same standards, same craftsmanship, same craftsmen. So, when you think LA and Fullerton, it's not quite the same as a Corporation Bach in Bronx after they moved to Mount Vernon. Now there are some noticeable differences there with Vincent Bach going from Corporation Bronx factory to the Mount Vernon factory. And then, of course, from Mount Vernon, they went to, what was it, Elkhart, I think, or wherever they moved after that. They moved to Ohio. They got out of New York and they moved to Ohio. And, and then they got bought by Conn-Selmer, and, they're out there now. So anyway, but, Bachs today are still pretty fantastic. Things change over the years. Technology changes over the years. And computers are used a lot more in design now, and, more machinery is used, less handcrafting. But what you're going to look at that. Didn't that shine up beautifully? Here I am talking, and voila. Il magnifique. Anyway, so I'm going to finish up this bell here and decide what I'm going to do with the rest of it. I may scratch the tuning slide, polish up the braces, and scratch the gooseneck. Of course, I'm leaving the bell shiny. So we'll see how this all works out. Okay, that's it. This is the end of part 1. Stay tuned for more.